Get the money out of your 401ks strategically in 5 years. In this episode, I'm going to address the question, how to withdraw money from 401ks after age 59 and a half. Now, get ready. It's going to be the opposite of what you've probably heard to take out the minimum that you need. Nope. You want to get it out, the taxes over and done with in 5 years if you can, and reposition that net after-tax money to something that's going to be tax-free from now on. I'll explain why and the power behind this as we continue in this episode, so get ready. So my name's Doug Andrew, and I've been a financial strategist and a tax minimization specialist, a retirement planning specialist, for more than 4.5 decades. And in doing that, I've helped many people free themselves from what I call the tax trap. And they've sort of painted themselves into this corner with their yet to be taxed IRAs and 401ks. You're going to see here something that I developed years ago that I call a strategic rollout. It's not a rollover, it's a rollout. You're getting the money out of your IRAs or 401ks. See, a rollover, as far as I'm concerned, is going from the frying pan into the fire. You're continuing to defer, delay, procrastinate, okay? Another word for defer is put off or procrastinate. When has procrastinating anything turned out good for you? It hasn't for me. You know, if I were a physician, I probably spent most of my career curing people's financial dis-ease. See, when we're not at ease physically at a cellular level, we call that disease. Well, there's a lot of people that are not at ease financially. They have a tax dis-ease when they go to retire because they find themselves in as higher bracket as they've ever been in, and they don't know what to do, and they think they're saving tax by taking out minimum distributions the rest of their life. No. You're going to see that actually compounds the problem. So I would rather prevent the tax disease, but frankly, most people I have had to cure the tax dis-ease. And so I'm going to show you how to do that. And if you're young enough, how to prevent it altogether. So there are many couples that have come to me, and whatever their retirement resources were, whether they had $500,000, $1 million, $4 million, one couple had $8 million. Oftentimes, as they begin to withdraw money out of a qualified plan like a 401k or their IRAs or pension or profit sharing plans, they're all qualified plans. Qualified with who? The government, okay? You got your tax break usually on the contribution phase unless you opted to convert to a Roth and you've already taken care of the tax by doing that. And so many couples, if they had $200,000 that was going to show up on their 1040 tax return, by doing a strategic rollout over 5 years, I have successfully transferred $80,000, $100,000, even $120,000, 60% of their income from being taxed the rest of their life on the front of their 1040 tax return, and they've gone down to only maybe 40% of that. $80,000 is taxed. The other $120,000 is now tax-free. Now, the IRS knows they keep receiving that, but they know it is cut and dried. It's been tax-free as a sacred tax-free cash cow in the Internal Revenue Code for over 107 years. So I'm going to share some stories with you, but remember at the end of this episode, I'm going to give you an opportunity to claim your free copy of my most recent best-selling book, The Laser Fund. Over 300 pages of charts, graphs, and explanations, but also there are 12 chapters that have 62 actual client stories like the ones I'm going to share with you. But let's talk about the strategy first of all. It's actually a 3-part strategy. A strategic rollout is the term that I coined. It's not a rollover, it's a rollout. You're getting the money out and the taxes over and done with, usually strategically over a 5-year period, maybe longer. And so most of the time, time, we've been able to get people's money trapped in IRAs and 401ks repositioned out. The tax is over and done with at today's lower rates. And then what do we do with the after-tax money? See, a lot of CPAs, tax attorneys go, well, why would you do that? Now where are you going to put the money? I go, hello? You're going to reposition the after-tax money into something that's going to be tax-free from now on. They go, what's that? So I have to teach them about the laser fund, okay? But see, what I like to do is reposition it into something that's not only tax-free from now on, but what will ultimately blossom in value when you die, reimbursing you many-fold for the taxes you paid. So you're really not out anything, or your spouse or your children. They'll actually come out ahead versus leaving the money in IRAs or 401ks the rest of your life and taking required minimum distributions, which is the worst advice I've ever heard. You're going to understand why when I tell you the stories. Now, the third part of the strategy we don't use all the time, but it's to offset some or all of the tax incurred during the rollout process by creating or resurrecting new tax deductions. Many people have been killing their tax deductions because they were paying off their real estate properties or their house. The children are gone, and later in life, if they're still living with you, you can't deduct them anymore. People usually aren't contributing money to IRAs and 401ks in retirement. If they're business owners, they don't have those deductions, and Congress keeps raising taxes. And so we have to resurrect tax deductions to help you eliminate the tax impact during the rollout process. So that's what is called a strategic rollout. You'll understand it better next when I give you some actual stories and examples of how we've done this. So in your free copy of the Laser Fund book, which is 300 pages, there's 12 chapters that contain 62 actual chicken soup for the financial soul stories. One of those chapters is dedicated to this strategy. And so I'll give you a quick summary of some of the stories. I remember a husband and wife, they were both school teachers, and they came to me at age 60. So they're over age 59 and a half. They don't have a 10% penalty if they start tapping into their 401ks, their 403bs, and their tax shielded annuities. Their tax advisor said, oh, do you need the money? They said, no, we don't need the money. We're not going to really retire until we're age 70 and a half. Back then, you could put it off until age 70 and a half before you had to start withdrawing money, or else the IRS penalizes you 50% on what you should have pulled out. Now it's age 72. They want that money out in tax before you die, so they can tax it again when you do die. Now, most CPAs and tax attorneys, in fact, CNBC tells you, if you don't need the money, continue to defer. That's like saying continue to procrastinate. But see, I have a software program, and in a nutshell, I showed these two school teachers. Now, if you continue to earn, let's say 7.2% rate of return, they had $250,000 in their accounts. That should double to $500,000. And then if you started taking out RMDs, required minimum distributions, this is how much tax you will pay by stringing it out during the husband's life expectancy, then the wife's life expectancy, because usually the man dies first. And then as you leave it behind to your children, their life expectancies, they were flabbergasted. Even if Congress never raised taxes, they were going to shell out more than $250,000 in taxes, and that's how much they had. I said, yeah, you're just delaying the inevitable. You're compounding the problem. I felt like Sam I Am in Green Eggs and Ham. I said, you will like this. You will see. No, we don't want to pay the tax. You're going to pay it sooner or later. Finally, I convinced them. I said, if we get it out over 5 years, and we roll this out, you're going to pay about $12,500 a year in tax, or $60,000. Oh, we don't want to pay that. I said, you're going to pay more than that. I just showed you. They go, okay. And so I said, you ready to go? And they said, well, is this what you would do? And I said, well, I would resurrect some deductions you've been killing on your rental properties. I would refinance those and get some deductions going. It's a concept that I teach about being your own banker. They did that, and the tax liability went from $60,000 down to $20,000. They refinanced some other properties and it went down to zero. In 5 years, they were ready now pay off all their properties. And I said, you're earning twice as much as the net after tax cost of the mortgage. I wouldn't do that. You're making $32,000 a year. The mortgage is only costing you $16,000. And they go, oh yeah, that would be stupid. But here's the deal. I saved them $250,000 of unnecessary tax that they were going to pay by stringing it out. Now, they got that $250,000 out over a 5-year period, and they actually got out $360,000 tax-free. They are experiencing double the net spendable income, and it's tax-free because they use the laser fund. Now, folks, I have helped a gentleman who was widowed at age 70, and I was able to save him $750,000 of unnecessary tax. At the time he came to us, he had $600,000, and his advisor said, "Oh, just take out RMDs, 4% rule. 4% on $600,000 was $24,000 a year. How pathetic is that?" And it was taxable. He was only netting $16,000. Long story short, in 5 years with a strategic rollout, he ended up getting $750,000 because he was earning interest that he was able to earn with us on his laser fund. He had $750,000 tax-free. We got the money out without any tax consequence. He's been earning 8% and some years 10%. Let's just take 8. What's 8% on $750,000 in the laser fund? That is $60,000 a year. How much more is $60,000 than $16,000, which is what he was getting net after tax out of his IRAs? Folks, we 3.5 times his cash flow by using this strategic rollout strategy. Another couple, both husband and wife were physicians. They had $4.6 million saved. Their accountant said, "Oh, they're going to pay $2.6 million in tax over the next few years on those, but they can afford it." I said, "Well, let's ask them." I said, "I can't save you all of that in tax, $2.6 million, but I could save you $1.2 million. They said, "Yeah, let's do it." I was able to do a strategic rollout and save them $1.2 million of unnecessary tax. They set up their family bank with that. $1.2 million is generating $100,000 a year of tax-free cash flow for their children, grandchildren into perpetuity, for college, mission accounts, military, it doesn't matter what it is, where they can empower their posterity instead of just sending the money down the drain in unnecessary tax. We do this all the time. So as I connect the dots here of how to withdraw money out of tax-deferred accounts like 401ks or IRAs or 403bs or 457s, they're all qualified plans. Hopefully you're getting some insights that you want to strategically roll the money out sooner than later and get the taxes over and done with at today's lower tax rates rather than thinking taxes in the future will be lower. Nope. People find themselves in as high or higher tax brackets, especially during retirement if they've saved very much money. Now, my favorite vehicle to reposition the after-tax money is in what I call the laser fund. And so I wrote a book with that title, The Laser Fund, How to Diversify and Create the Foundation for a Tax-Free Retirement. And in this book, it's actually 2 books in one. This side is about 200 pages, 14 chapters with all kinds of charts and graphs and explanations. If you're more of a right brain learner, you turn the book over and read this one. This has 12 chapters with 62 actual client stories. And you'll see examples of how people with money trapped in IRAs and 401ks got their money out with the least tax impact and repositioned it into a portfolio of laser funds to accumulate their money tax-free under Section 72E of the Internal Revenue Code the rest of their life. They were able to access income in retirement totally tax-free under Section 7702. And when they ultimately die, anything that's left in there blossoms in value and transfers income tax-free under Section 101A. You will learn about those 3 sections of the code in this book. So to claim your free copy and understand this and many other concepts on asset optimization, claim your book by going to laserfund.com, L-A-S-E-R fund.com, and you contribute a nominal amount toward the shipping and handling, and I cover the rest of that cost. You have to have some skin in the game. If my children wanted a copy, they would have to do that. And I'll pay for the book. I'll fire out a hard copy to you. There's also options in there to get the audio version, digital version. If you like to watch and learn, listen and learn. I am really into empowering you so that you can have a brighter future and not outlive your money.